Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to a Week 16 edition of the Established to Run First Look Show, a holiday edition, if you will. Happy holidays to everybody out there. Kind of a wonky Week 16 DraftKings main slate to look forward to, as it is on Saturday, Christmas Eve for the main slate. And we still do have 3 games on Sunday as well, but we will not be covering those in this video. But we certainly will be covering the main slate, which is Saturday, which is going to be similar to what a lot of these Sunday main slates have looked like of late, meaning that it is 10 games. So as always, let's dive right in. Once again, I hope you all do have a happy holiday week coming up. Hopefully you can still find time in your life for family, togetherness, and DFS as well, because we only have a couple more weeks of God's game here, and of the regular season at least, which is crazy. It's just absolutely flown by. But Week 16, and I'll dive right in. Let's talk about the teams that are off the slate. So we do have a Thursday night game. That is the Jaguars versus the Jets in the Meadowlands. So as good as Trevor Lawrence stacks have been of late, that will not be of interest to us here on the main slate. And then there's a Saturday night game as well, which is going to be basically, at the end of the main slate day. There is a primetime game that's not on the main slate. That is the Raiders and the Steelers. So no Devontae Adams, no Josh Jacobs choices to make this week. And then Sunday games, we have 3, kind of similar to how we had it on Saturday this week. Next week, we have them on Christmas. Excuse me. So those are Packers, Dolphins, Broncos, Rams, and Buccaneers and Cardinals. So some consequential stuff there. And then Monday night, we have Chargers, Colts. So those are all the teams off our slate. We do once again have a 10-game slate. And something that really is of note here is the weather of this week. And I don't want to overreact to it. And Adam, obviously, Levitan always talks about let's really not overreact. We saw what happened in the Bills-Dolphins game on Saturday night. I mean, that was as cold and snowy as we really see usually in the NFL, and it didn't matter. These teams were still able to air it out. However, Vegas is taking into account weather this week. It seems like there's no 50-point over-unders at all. The top game is Chiefs-Seahawks. That is a -9, 49-point total. That is going to be your highest. The Chiefs have a 29.5 team total. That game is in Kansas City. Wind's looking like it's in check. It's just going to be super, super cold. If you don't know already, it's going to be cold pretty much everywhere in the country this week, with the exception of it looks like San Francisco might get up to 60. Even Miami on a Sunday morning, which isn't on this main slate, but even Miami on Sunday afternoon is going to be looking at 44 degrees Fahrenheit. So we got a cold front coming through the entire country this week, and we'll talk a little bit about it as we go through. Just maybe some teams that'll be a little bit more run heavy than normal, but I'm not going to look into it as far as avoiding full on stacks unless we're thinking winter vortex type weather that would really impact getting the ball downfield, etc. So yeah, no 50-point game total. The 2 highest, Colts, Chiefs, Seahawks in Arrowhead. That's a -9 with a 49. Definitely like attacking that game. And then the Giants, Vikings is going to be your second highest. That's, really the only dome game on the main slate. 47.5 with only a 3.5-point total. So they think these teams are going to score somewhat and be close. So I do think that the Giants-Vikings game is definitely another one to look at here. Obviously, we do have the Bills on this slate as well. That's games in Chicago. We're looking at 6-degree weather as of right now, according to NFLweather.com, and 18-mile-per-hour wind. So, that is cold and, a good amount of wind. We'll see. Keep your eye on the weather reports as long as precipitation doesn't come in there. I wouldn't be too afraid of attacking that game. However, you normally think Buffalo against the Bears, we're getting a 30-point team total. No. Buffalo only has a 24.5 implied Vegas team total this week. So it's something to consider when you're building out your stacks. And yeah, I think that's mostly, we'll talk a little bit more about weather as we go on here, just to keep it in the back of your mind, all the way in the back. You don't need to keep it up front here. Again, I don't want to overreact to it, but it's something on this particular weekend where everything's cold and windy and potentially some other stuff. That Vikings-Giants game looks damn good in the dome, and it's just something to consider as well. A lot of low game totals this week. I think the Saints-Browns is 31. That has 25-mile-per-hour winds. That's going to be really hard. I have some Deshaun Watson teams that I have in best ball, and I'm not expecting much from there. Super windy. on over there. That makes things difficult. Maybe a Nick Chubb week, if you will. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, let's start at quarterback. We just mentioned the Bills. Josh Allen, as I mentioned, in a vacuum, I'd really love this spot against the Bears. We saw Jalen Hurts last week. The Bears have, shown with Fields can compete, at least stay in these games, which would be huge for Allen's ceiling case. He coming off a close to 40-point game in that bad weather. So obviously we know he could do it. He is, him and Mahomes probably, especially with Hurts not playing this week, are basically in a ceiling to themselves this week. You could throw Fields in that mix as well. But I love Josh Allen. I love the matchup. So I don't think I'll be avoiding it. I'm going to keep an eye on that weather. Maybe it'll dictate how much I play, but certainly I would still be playing plenty of Josh Allen in tournaments. I'm not going to be too concerned. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes here against the Seattle Seahawks team that has gotten him back and forth environments quite a bit. Obviously, the Seahawks team has really come crashing back down to earth as far as their competitive nature over the last, 4 to 5 weeks. But I still think that this game that they will figure out a way to push. KC has really become a pass funnel. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. We saw even Texas put up 24 points against them. The Broncos put up 28. The Bengals put up 24. The last team they really blew out was the Rams, and that's the Rams, right? The Chargers put up 27. They let these teams score on them, which both keeps the pace and the environment the way we want it to go and makes, these crazy Mahomes ceiling. Look at the numbers on the year, almost 4,500 yards, 35 and 11. And the window is just open right back up for him to retake the MVP favorite lead. So I wouldn't be surprised if, the coaches know this stuff and they do want this for their players. So wouldn't be surprised if they keep their foot on the gas, even if they do cover that 9-point spread. And as I always say, if you're going to cover those double-digit spreads, you got to do it probably through the air, especially when you're a team like the Chiefs. So I think Mahomes is a fantastic play. I mentioned Hurts likely missing this week, sprained shoulder. No reason to get him in. They pretty much have that 1 seed locked up. So I don't understand why you would play him here in this spot. I mentioned Fields on the other side of that Buffalo game. Don't like him too much here. Tough weather. Similar spot to this Philadelphia spot in the last week, and he had 24 points. Obviously, he was 5 yards away from a rushing bonus. Could have been a little bit bigger. But the 7,500 tag in this tough spot, I almost always rather try to find a way to get up to Josh Allen in the same game. Let's wait and see what's going to happen with Baltimore. Lamar has missed the last couple weeks. Obviously, Huntley has not been great, but this is a good matchup against Atlanta. Baltimore is going to be cold as well, like the rest of the country, has 19 miles per hour. We're seeing with 14 mile per hour winds. Not too bad. I think you'd be able to attack it if he plays. We'll see what happens. Joe Burrow underneath that. I'm just something about these New England environments that is less exciting to me, but we know Burrow is that kind of guy, like really the Brady of like 2020 and 21, where there's just so many 304 touchdown games in the bag and in the range of outcomes that I don't not consider him in tournaments, but he's fully priced at 7K. It's in New England. New England's coming off the most embarrassing loss maybe of that I can ever remember seeing. And, I just, there's something about this spot that concerns me. There's, I don't know. It's going to be 24 there. Not too bad. I mean, I love Burrow. He wouldn't be my top choice in tournaments this week. Definitely think Kirk Cousins is one of the top plays, though. I mean, look at the amount of dropbacks over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, on Saturday, got in that crazy comeback back and forth game. And, I don't know if this game can play up to that kind of pace or this kind of play way where they need to drop back 50 times with the Giants, but the Giants coming off a big win, looks better than they had in recent weeks. They were able to get Saquon going a little bit again. Their offensive line is healthier than it's been. So, I do wonder if they could push a little bit and keep this pace up in the dome. I definitely like Kirk a lot. And I like the other side too. We'll talk about him in a second. Dak is at home against Philly. Yeah, I think this is a fine spot, actually. I know Philly's defense is really, really good. But Dak is priced as down as he's really ever been at 6,100. Haven't got the ceiling game in a while. I'd imagine Dallas wants this game. Although I don't think either team really needs this game. But I would imagine Dallas wants this game. So I don't mind it against a Philly team that maybe is just without Hurts, and we'll see. I think it's possible. I would have made an argument for Deshaun if the weather there wasn't going to be so bad. And there's just all these guys above and below him that I like more. Geno, I think, will be in play once again here in Arrowhead. Haven't seen the ceiling game in Geno, I guess, in like 3 weeks. We saw it against the Rams there. Obviously will be cold. And usually I do like to pick one side of a game like this, but when there's a price discrepancy between Geno and Mahomes, which is 58 and 84 or whatever, you could definitely see it being both sides. And something I like to do in these situations is bring double bringbacks with your Seattle stuff. So you can do like a skinny stack with Geno and DK Metcalf and bring back 2 Chiefs on the other side. And this way it's as if you were stacking Mahomes, but you're getting the salary saving for the rest of your lineup by still getting exposure to that game. I think that's a reasonable way to approach it. So I think he's in play. And then I think Daniel Jones is definitely in play, right? We've seen the Vikings defense be able to get really exploited over the last couple of weeks of the Lions. And we saw what the Colts were able to do in the first half of on Saturday. Daniel Jones is certainly up and down, and the floor is really low. But we have seen a ceiling because of his legs. And if this game, as I mentioned, if this game does play up in the dome, I think it's a pretty good spot for Daniel Jones. So I like him at 5,600 quite a bit. And it's another week where like you got the couple guys on the top, but you could really make an argument for a lot of these guys as we go down the list. And I think the reason is these very low game totals. Like nothing's just popping off the page. Maybe Chiefs Seahawks, but like those mid-tier and cheap guys, not really. So I don't see why you can't go to Brock Purdy also at home against Washington. Maybe some of the best weather of the week at 59 with no wind. So that's something to consider. And Goff against Carolina as well. And then even Sam Darnold, who is at home against the Lions. I don't love the ceiling here, but we've been attacking the Lions pass defense all season long. We know the Lions are hitting a stride. They're going to score a lot of points. He might have to drop back 30, 40 times. He's 5,100. I don't hate it, which is crazy for me to say. I really don't hate it. And then the other guy that's going to, be in play just because of how cheap he is probably going to be Gardner Minshew. I don't love this spot going into Dallas with Dallas's prolific pass rush coming in. Rusty hasn't played all year. Probably would just rather play Darnold and get up to a couple hundred, but he's that cheap. Anytime you get a starting quarterback in the 4K range, I understand it if you want to give it a shot. I think it's something you can do. I'm not so interested personally. All right, going over to running back here. CMC certainly hitting an absolute stride. We're now 3 straight games of 28 points or more. We have 30 plus in there. And it's not like these matchups have all been peachy. That Tampa Bay run defense is one of the toughest to attack in the league, and he still got it done with 8.5 yards a carry. Obviously, we know what he gets done in the air. Washington has had a solid run defense for much of this year, but Saquon was very good against them, and it's Christian McCaffrey. I'm not worried at all. They are building this entire offense around him since Elijah Mitchell has gone down, since Brock Purdy's come in, especially. They are building this entire offense around him. No Debo. The floor is so high here, and I think the price may keep him, falling through the cracks from an ownership perspective a little bit. I have some Christian McCaffrey in best ball. I'm really, teams advancing to the semis. I'm really hoping for a big CMAC week, and I can definitely see it happening at home here as the San Francisco just continues to roll. Maybe the best team in the NFC right now. Them or the Eagles, obviously. Derrick Henry gets the nut matchup once again. He gets it twice per year. He did this in week 8, and he had 39 points, 220 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. This one's at home. End of season, Derrick Henry. We love end of season, Derrick Henry. Weather in Tennessee, 14 degrees. We love end of season, Derrick Henry. We love cold season, Derrick Henry. We love a great matchup, Derrick Henry. This is a prime Derrick Henry spot. And the only reason I didn't make him the cover boy of this video is because we've already done that. We've done Derrick Henry against the Texans as a cover boy in week 8, and that obviously hit. I think this is just a fantastic Derrick Henry spot, hard to avoid. I think he'll probably be a cash lock, I think, for a lot of players. Saquon, we mentioned, it took him about a month to find the stride again, but was over almost 5 yards a carry, did have 5 catches through the air, found the end zone. Could have been a bigger game as well. I really like going to Saquon at sub 8K. They lowered his price this week. I really like it in that game. I like kind of a Cousins, Jefferson, Saquon bring back. I think it's a really interesting way. Obviously, it's expensive. You'll have to find some value, but I think doing things like that, or even Saquon and Daniel Jones, I love pairing those guys together when I do it. I think he's definitely in play. So top end of running back here, definitely a little bit different this week of how I feel about it. I like a lot of these names compared to previous weeks. Nick Chubb as well. I mean, Nick Chubb, we've been waiting. We're now 4 weeks separated from even a 20-point game, but this weather is going to be terrible. Vegas looks at this game as like a 31.5 over under. That is nothing. Each team has like a 15-point implied team total. They really think this game is going to be a slog. And if it does, who does that benefit the most? It's not Alvin Kamara on the other side, who the Saints are clearly hesitant to use and gets a lot of his work done in the pass game. It's Nick Chubb and the workhorse nature of his role. So I definitely think Chubb's in play. I think Dalvin as well. I mean, some Brian Robinson run on the Giants here. Giants pass rush is really, looking much better, but I still think their run D is pretty suspect with that second level with their linebackers, really subpar talent. Dalvin Cook, the role is still really, really good. We saw him in that game against the Colts at the epic comeback. Could have had a much bigger game. Did get to 28 points, 95 yards through the air, 95 yards through the ground, but could have had the bonus on either of those and probably found the end zone more. I mean, this could have been like a 30, 40-point game for Dalvin, maybe hitting a stride here now at home once again in a matchup you're not scared of. So these top 5 guys, I really love all 5 of them. I don't want to play a lot of them. Ramondre, everyone was worried about the injury. And, one of the few things I got right in DFS last week was playing a lot of Ramondre still when I knew the field was going to be off him. Obviously started the lateral madness to end that game, but it was more Jacoby Meyer's fault of what really ensued. But I think, at home, Ramondre, Bell, Cowwork, we'll see if Damian Harris comes back, but he would certainly be in play with that role. Pollard and Zeke, once again, I'll be interested in against Philadelphia. Philly's run D has definitely gotten better since the additions of Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. But, at home, I think both guys still have a ceiling. Mixon, I don't love this spot as much. New England's a tough run D. They did a pretty good job against Josh Jacobs this past week, but Mixon has a really solid role that definitely would make your pool in tournaments. I mentioned Kamara already. The match was great. The spot's great. The game environment should be great. They did give him 21 carries on the ground. So when I was talking about Nick Chubb, I didn't mean to say I'm off Kamara, but I would just prefer Chubb if I was attacking one of those games. Kamara, they didn't raise his price. The environment should be good. No Mark Ingram still. I understand the Kamara thing. Could have had a much bigger day than he did. I think both, we talk about the Bills-Chiefs game being maybe possibly run heavy because of the cold. So I think Montgomery and both Singletary and James Cook will be in play a little bit. Kenneth Walker in that game, I definitely like him most in correlation here. I prefer to attack that Seahawks pass game against KC. However, I think he could be a part of that. So I don't mind that at all. And then Miles Sanders as well. A little bit of a tough matchup against Dallas run D, but killed everyone last week on big ownership in that matchup with Chicago. Wouldn't mind going back there. Maybe they'll lean on him a little bit more with Minshew at the helm. It's just okay, though, in my opinion. And then obviously you have McKinnon and Pacheco in fantastic matchups. I tried to tell people McKinnon last week, I think everyone was going to get off him because, how can he do it again? But his role is really good. And yes, the pass game stuff is hard to replicate. 17 targets the last couple of weeks, got over mid-30s points because of what he did through the air. But his role on the ground is legit. He had a rushing touchdown in this game. He had 10 carries. They trust him in the red zone. They are giving him some base work. So especially in this game, if it goes back and forth, and we tried to, this is a mistake we make, I think, as an industry. We tried to predict game script last week, and we just assumed it was going to be an Isaiah Pacheco week because they're playing the Texans. The Texans have a terrible run defense. It's going to get up big and be more groundwork. So that obviously didn't play out. And now maybe this week, though, we're expecting, hey, Seattle could push a little bit. Maybe this is the week that it has become more of a Pacheco week. He still has 15 carries on the ground. Could have had a bigger week, definitely efficient on his work on the ground. This matchup doesn't scare you. He's not getting it done through the air like McKinnon is. Obviously, it's a max one spot between these two, but I don't mind trying to get over the field on both guys. I don't mind it at all. So, yeah, you go down from there. I mentioned Singletary. I think he'll definitely be in play. I'm still kind of off these Lions guys while this is a true three-man committee. They did give Swift through the air a lot, 9 targets. I think he make my GPP pool, but that would be about it. The Falcons guys, Tyler Algier, coming off his best game of the year by a mile, was in the optimal lineup. Clearly, they have a willingness to use him. I don't love this spot on the road in Baltimore. And, as you go down here to some cheap options, I mentioned James Cook. I'd throw him in your pool. And then, really, it's not like the same this week as last, because I'm not going to these Houston running backs really in the same spot against a tough Titans run defense. So most of your value is going to come in that 5K range. Some of these guys can make your pool, but it's going to be the McKinnons, the Pachecos that are still under 6K. I think that are most interesting at running back. All right, going over to receiver here. So we mentioned in the Giants-Vikings game, I think Justin Jefferson is certainly in play there. The Giants have definitely been getting targeted by number one receivers over the last couple of weeks. We saw the Washington team, try to target McLaurin a lot. Obviously, Jefferson's role right now is just unfreaking stoppable. I don't think the Giants are going to get a Dory Jackson back yet. So, they just don't have the talent to match up with the talent of Justin Jefferson. 30-plus DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. This is at home. He's going for that 2,000-yard receiving record. He's got 3 games to do it. I would not be surprised at all to see this be another huge game. So I think Justin Jefferson's a great play. I wouldn't mind Diggs, if we think they could throw a little bit. He's kind of due here. Hasn't had a 30-plus point game since week 6. Hasn't had a high 20-point game since week 10. Had a couple low 20s, but now he's, been a little bit I don't mind this matchup. We saw what A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith were able to do to the same team, but, might be a tough weather spot. We'll see. I think I'm going to lean into it a little bit. Jamar, I'm a little bit scared of Jamar. Obviously, the role is just absolutely elite. 13 targets, 15 targets, 11, 10. Over double-digit targets in 4 of his last 5 games, 5 of his last 6 games, I should say. Only got 760 and 1, saved his game a little bit by finding the end zone. We know those 30-point games are in the range. This is a matchup-proof player. I don't mind it. New England, though, in New England, did do a good job shutting down Davante Adams last week. I just maybe if he's going to come with ownership, would back off a little bit. Speaking of backing off a little bit, A.J. Brown coming off two of his last 3 games being over 30 points, does not have his boy Jalen Hurts this week in Dallas, dealing with some Trayvon Diggs, who I think is overrated, but dealing with some Trayvon Diggs with Gardner Minshew. I just don't know if I trust Minshew to get the ball to A.J. Brown downfield the same way I do Hurts. I'm not off it, but it's something to consider. Amon-Ra, I think, is a very good play. They still price up to 7-8. I think it was a great GPP play last week against the Jets. Didn't hit his ceiling, but still got a 7 on 10 targets and 76 yards through the air. I think this is a spot in Carolina for sure is a really good one. So I like Amon-Ra. CD against a tough Philly pass defense. Maybe I don't hate it though. I think maybe they can try to line him up in the slot a little bit. They did get 10 targets against them last time. Put him on the slot, get him away from those 2 outside corners, and he could still do some damage. So I think he's a play. DK Metcalf's probably my favorite overall cost-adjusted receiver on the week. So no Tyler Lockett is looking like for at least one game. They're probably playing from behind. The Chiefs, as I mentioned, the Chiefs' pass defense has been really suspect at best. They've been really bad for a lot of it. And not only that, I was looking at some of their seasonal stuff. They've given up big games to big wide receivers, particularly. So in week 2, they gave up a big game to Mike Williams. Week 3, they gave up a pretty big game to Michael Pittman. Week 4 to Mike Evans, and so on and so forth. Davante Adams had a big game. Josh Palmer had a big game against them. Diggs did too. Obviously not as big of a receiver, but these number 1 receivers and big bodied receivers have had their way. He's going to be forced into getting a ton of targets without Lockett. And I'm sure he'll be popular, but I love him as a one-off. I love him in correlation. He's a great play this week. Higgins, little pricey again, same thing. I think, could benefit for being on the other side of Chase if they really work on shutting Jamar down. So we'll see there. Devonta, similar story to A.J. Brown, but his role has been so consistent. Look at that. Either 8 or 9 targets according to DraftKings metrics in every game since week 10. Just so consistent is Devonta Smith. I like Brandon Ayuk a lot actually this week. I'm assuming Debo is going to still be out, and he hasn't done much yet of late. Has Ayuk. His games in San Francisco, I think it's easier to throw on Washington than run. So yeah, I don't mind Ayuk there. McLaurin on the other side of that game, I think is okay. He's cheap enough where the role with Heineke is still really strong. It's fine. Obviously not the best matchup in the world. Not going to these New Orleans receivers, not in that game environment. Same thing really on the other side with Amari Cooper. I think you can make your pool, but I would tread carefully. DJ Moore is just in such an obvious good spot. Could have had a bigger day last week, but did get his 5 for 73 and found the end zone. Still only 5,500. This is a matchup with the Lions in Carolina. Lions have become a team that we love to pass on. We can't really run on right now. So great spot for DJ Moore. So I'm saying like Sam Darnold, DJ Moore could be a really cheap stack in GPPs this week. I mean, talking large field. Slayton can make your player pool as a Giants piece. Same thing with Thielen. Gabe Davis, same thing in Josh Allen. And then, anything under that, check out establishtheRun.com. Only a couple weeks left. You get a weekly package. Check out what we got going on in cheap wide receiver volume. That will come out on Thursday. We'll talk about the sub 5K guys there. All right, going over to tight end. They did bring Travis Kelce back up to the price. We've seen him for a lot of these past couple seasons. First time this year, though, except for week 7, that he's cracking 8K, coming off that 23.5 point game, 10 for 105, caught all 10 of his targets. I mentioned last week how I was a little worried about the eye test with Travis Kelce. Started with his alligator arming type thing, some drops. You look at the split between receptions and targets wasn't so good. And then he comes out in week 15 and says, no, I'm just fine, Gary. And he is 10 for 10 for 105. Could have found the end zone, would have been a bigger day. I think this is another huge day for Travis Kelce. At home against a really good matchup against Seattle. I have a lot of Kelce advancing in best balls. I feel lucky for that, but I love a Mahomes-Kelce start to my stacks this week. Mark Andrews is only 5,500, by far the cheapest he's been all year. Has really struggled to get anything going really in the second half of the season, but especially since Lamar's gone down. Still is getting targets, though, and only at 5,500 at home against Atlanta, whether it's Huntley or Lamar. I love this spot as a bounce-back spot for Mark Andrews on a salary-saving spot. I think it's a really good bounce-back Mark Andrews spot. So definitely prefer the top 2 tight ends a lot. I like Andrews so much more than George Kittle this week, who they immediately priced all the way back up to almost the mid-5s after hitting and when they lowered him down to the mid-4s. So this matchup against Washington, they're pretty good against tight ends. Not necessarily the best, although the weather's good. From attacking this game, I definitely want pieces of him. But for only 200 more, I would really like the better matchup with Andrews, regardless of who's starting at quarterback. Hawkinson will be in play in that Giants game we like to attack already. And, going down from there, I mean, Dallas Goedert's expected to be activated or was activated off IR today. All these mid-tier guys have their asterisks, right? Goddard with Minshew in Dallas, Kmet in that bad weather game against a tough Buffalo D, and Njoku in the game that Vegas is predicting can't throw on all. Schultz, I think, would be okay in Dak stuff, but still tough matchup against Philly. Same thing as Kmet with Dawson Knox. So then you go all the way down once again to everyone's favorite Chig, who just is such a natural target earner, gets a great matchup here with Houston at home. Like, he would be a guy I'm looking at again. I think Daniel Bellinger is a little overpriced, but is a solid punt play as well against, in the dome. So, these spots are also murky that, like, you could take some shots on some of these 2K guys, but I think, it's pretty, I'm going to condense my tight end pool, I think, to the top, and then some punts I like from Chig and down. For me this week is kind of what I'm looking at. Unless if I do, I would correlate it with quarterback stuff. If I use anyone else, Hawkinson, Knox, I would correlate for sure. All right. So 25 minutes on the nose. That will just about do it here for week 16. Keep an eye on everything we have going on at Establish the Run. We will have plenty coming for you all week, even during the holidays, including projections on the Christmas Day slate, the Sunday 3-gamer. We will have projections on site. I don't know if we're doing any extra content around it. My guess would be similar to what they did on the Kama Sutra show last week, the Establish the Show. If you're behind the paywall, Adam, Evan, and Andrew will give some takes and plays that they like for the Christmas slate as well. We'll have projections on all of it. I will include in cheap wide receiver volume, for example, Sunday only cheap wide receiver guys. So we'll keep it in our content. Obviously, our focus will be on this main slate here, but there'll be plenty of projections and everything for the Sunday slate as well. Again, check out everything we got going on. Podcast coming out to your feeds later today. And I wish you all the best of luck in week 16. And more importantly, I really wish you all a happy holidays, happy Hanukkah if you're celebrating right now. Merry Christmas if you're celebrating on Saturday and Sunday. And I appreciate you guys all being with me here throughout the season. I've had a lot of fun doing these first look videos with you all, and I appreciate you tuning in. I will be back next week for the second to last regular season first look. Happy holidays, everybody.